You're live.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Councillor Township having with us tonight, and I'd like to welcome Kent to the meeting. That being done, I'd like to for approval of the agenda for the March 15th meeting. Moved by Doug, second by Linda. Any questions or additions? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Any conflicts of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Showing none. You'll have the approval of the minutes of March 1st, 2021 Stone Mills Regular Council meeting. Moved by Sherry, second by Kevin. Any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. We're going to do the budget meeting February 25th and March 8th. Stone Mills budget meetings. We'll do the two of them on one motion. Can I have a motion? Moved by John, second by Linda. Any questions? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, bylaws and okay. Bylaws and resolutions, municipal form of bylaw. Go ahead, Brian.
Your worship, as part of any appointments to municipal positions, there's a bylaw that's passed by council to implement those individuals into the positions. The bylaw before you this evening is to implement the position changes to the municipality for positions that already exist, as well as one incoming position that are included.
Any questions for Brian? So we're first, second, third reading. Moved by Sherry. Second by John. All in favor of the motion? Motion carried. Staff report, manager, planning. Okay, Treasurer Bushcott.
So the report you have in front of you tonight is for the budget changes that we discussed at the last meeting, which was to add the $7,500 to the Conservation Authority budget and the $3,300 for part-time employees food allowances. And council had given direction to staff to see if we could find the offset of those within services within the municipality. We came to a consensus as a management team that in order to have a sustainable budget going forward, the best place for us to cut was to remove the transfer to reserves for the future operating system of the municipality.
Any questions for Christina on that? Go ahead, Kevin.
Just a quick one. Brian, was that for if they wanted boots or they could use it for clothing as well? I thought that's what we said. I wasn't sure.
That's correct, Councillor Richmond. So the way we would term that would be to call it a uniform benefit. So whether individuals chose to use that for clothing or whether they chose to use that for boot allowance. If we call it a boot allowance, it would be universal in the sense that it would only be used for that. We would like to have some flexibility as it may not be a requirement every year for a specific item to be replaced.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Doug.
No,
Oh, sorry.
move.
Moved by Doug, second by Sherry. More questions, comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion carried. Number 2, Stone Mill draft budget for council consideration, first reading. Go ahead, Christina.
So it's your tax rates that we've already discussed. Thank you. At the 1.26% dollar value increase, but it's a negative 6% impact to the tax rate.
Any questions for Christina? Go ahead, Linda.
Just for the public, can you explain that? I should reword that, just for the public and Wenda.
Okay, so the 1.26% is actual dollars that we're asking for over last year's budget. So last year we raised a certain amount. This year we want to raise the extra amount, which is the equivalent of 1.26. And then when you put that against the tax rate, the assessment, the growth, etc., it reduces our actual tax rate by 6%. So it reduces the rate that people are going to get charged against their assessment. Yeah, 6.13.
You have something, Doug?
Yeah, just a question. Do we have any knowledge of what the school board in the county is doing?
I was told that the school board isn't gonna change. And the county, I would imagine next meeting, John, we'll likely have that.
We're in the 3% range,
So we are looking at a small increase.
largely because it's our,
Sure, go ahead.
yeah, a couple of big ads. All the long-term care homes are being urged to have 4 hours of care per resident across the province as part of the sort of reforms to long-term care. We're currently under 3 hours, so we have to hire a fair number of staff in order to meet that. And that's, gets into the hundreds of thousands. And I think the other thing, Eric, was going 24 hours at our Stone Mills base. Now, I'm not sure if that's gonna happen right away, because there's still some talk, but that's 300,000 or something like that. So a couple of major things will raise our tax rate.
So there is discussions heading forward for
Yeah.
24 hours on the basis.
Yeah.
I think we would put that off till October, if I'm not mistaken, maybe. I mean, that's just a discussion we're having.
Yeah.
You know. Okay, so I look for a motion for first reading of the budget. Moved by Kevin, second by Sherry. All in favor of the motion? Motion carries. Public Works Manager, Stone Mills Roadside Cleanup and Hazardous Waste report. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Good second, sorry.
So, Your Worship, there was another request on the budget in addition to the budget, which was for the Stone Mills draft budget for council consideration first reading. There's a second motion that's attached that council endorsed management to commence any market competitions or acquisition processes to carry out the projects. So essentially with the first reading with the budget, our staff and management are looking for approval to go ahead and start competitions if they were to look at vehicles or to secure vendors for summer projects. So if council's amenable, we would like to get that approval to start the process, recognizing that those decisions still come back to council.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yep.
No, Sherry? All in favor? Carried. Okay, Public Works Manager, you go ahead now.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first item on the attachment is the roadside litter pickup. We're offering again in 2021 with a slight recommendation by staff to reward some of the residents that go in the ditch lines and pick up any of the litter. They'll get a free bag for any bag that they collect. And the second part to that is the Household Hazardous Waste Day that's scheduled for April 17th, which will be held here at the Township Yard, same as previous Household Hazardous Waste Day.
Any questions? Go ahead, Wanda.
And there was just one item that, it said that it's being taken, already received at the landfill. And I didn't know that, I wasn't aware of that. Let me see, I think I've highlighted, empty paint cans can be recycled in the scrap bin at landfill sites. That was not something I was aware of, so thanks for throwing that in there.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, Jeff, the last time that we offered replacement bags for people, there was some concern that how we monitored that. And how some of the waste sites had concern whether they were what they were getting in actual fact was. Have you got any thoughts on how you're going to manage that?
The last two seasons that we've had this program, we actually painted the Stone Mills. It was the larger item bags. It was the farm and commercial bags. I can't remember the size of them offhand, but we would paint orange markings on it with construction paint. So if people used them and brought them into the landfill, they could identify it as being roadside litter.
Any other questions? Go ahead, John.
Thank you. How are we going to publicize the hazardous waste day, Jeff?
Well, hopefully it goes with coronavirus. Right now it's scheduled for April 17th, but could change weekly, if we go back into lockdown or any restrictions imposed. But it'll be on our website, and we've got signs made up for our landfills, each of the 3 landfills, and our social media site.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm looking for a motion that council receives and approves the Stone Mill roadside cleanup and household hazardous waste report as presented. Moved by Sherry, second by Glenda. All in favor? Motion carried.
If I may, your worship, there's one more item I handed out to council members. It came in late today. It's part of our household hazardous waste day agreements. It's a new agreement for household batteries. The name is Call to Recycle Canada. So that agreement's in front of you. We just have to have it approved and signed and sent back.
You make council's approval here?
Yes.
Okay. Have a report in front of you. I'll take a minute look at it before we approve it.
There's no cost to the municipality that we actually get paid for per kilogram.
I guess they'll read it all. You're comfortable with it, Jeff?
Yeah, I just received it half an hour ago. So.
Okay. Go ahead, Kevin.
So Jeff, you're saying that that's for the hazardous waste day, people can bring them, and they're gonna pay us to take them away, is that right?
That's correct. It's part of the household hazardous waste day in the stream of getting funding for what they bring in.
But the total cost is gonna be what, Jeff, this year? Something.
For household hazardous waste day,
Yeah.
it's usually in the 30 to 50,000 mark, depending on what we get back from funding. Depends a lot on the quantities that we get in.
Mm-hmm.
You want a couple more minutes? Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. Item 3.1 on page 3, and it goes over to page 4. Says they want those household batteries in steel drums with plastic liners, and they want to be filled to the top. Have they been picky about that? I mean, what happens if we end up with half a drum's worth? Do they not take them?
I'm sure Drainall can find a use for them or take them to the next event and fill that drum. This agreement is usually all done through our contractor, Drainall.
Thank you.
Anybody got anything else here? Give you a couple more minutes if you want.
Just the mainly with batteries, eh?
That's right. We have agreements that we've signed prior to stewardship and with Drainall itself. This is something new, so that's why it kind of got added at the last minute.
Okay, everybody okay with this? Would you look for a motion to receive and approve the report? All right. Moved by Linda, second by Doug, all in favor? Motion carried. Okay, chief building official Doug, proposed electrical vehicle acquisition as part of the 2021 snow bill budget.
Yeah, so came to council tonight, there's been a lot of debate, among staff and also at the council level. In the budget, I have $110,000 of, we'll call it surplus building department money accumulated over the last few seasons. With kind of an opportunity to spend not necessarily taxpayer money, but building permit dollars on bright, shiny new vehicles that have a price tag that would be maybe more than what you would normally see for a lot of municipal vehicles. Cutting edge technology that is new and doesn't come with a lot of municipal discounts. And yeah, yeah, just brought obviously the mechanic with me. There's been a lot of questions also about purchasing vehicles and whether they're going to hold up in given that they're new technology. And Nate has also worked at putting together kind of an idea in his mind of how much we might expect to save over the course of right now my vehicle outside has 220,000 kilometers on it. How much you might save if you drove this until it was 220,000 kilometers on it. Yeah, so it's just kind of open to have a good discussion about not only the purchase of green technology, but how much you want to spend in green technology, and how much too much, and whether the public is going to accept those big dollar values for those cars. Anyway, just kind of wanted to open the floor up to the council.
Do you have anything you want to say, Nate, before we get into a discussion here?
Just to add to what Jake said, is just did a cost comparison on his truck that he had out there for 218,000 kilometers. I took it as it was 12 liters per 100 kilometers. And the cost to run those 218,000 kilometers, I didn't realize it had 220 now, but was roughly $26,000 based on $1 a liter for fuel. And then I took a comparison of an electric vehicle, which is $3 a day to charge, it's $1,000 a year to charge it, and that's 400 kilometers a day. Which I didn't actually get down and figure out what he would put on in a year. I didn't break it down to that, but I just had those two cost comparisons, as well as oil changes throughout the life of the vehicle. That's $5,000 every 5,000 kilometers, right, roughly $100. And these electric vehicles have no oils to change, nothing at all, other than your charging costs, tires, and brakes.
Okay, anybody got some questions or comments for either one of the people? Go ahead, John.
So what would be the cost of a comparable vehicle, internal combustion engine vehicle now? Like an SUV or something?
I would think that would probably, with all the municipal discounts, probably roughly we could hold a competition, which we haven't held yet. And it would probably be around $30 a person, $30,000 a person, plus HST.
And you're hoping that the price of the electric ones is going to come down into the mid-40s?
We've received some internet rumors that potentially they won't. Potentially what you're looking at right now will stay the same even after you get new cars onto the market this fall or next year as well.
So when you amortize the purchase price up front and then compare it with the operating cost differences, it works out about the same.
I didn't actually, what I based that off was just fuel and oil changes. There have been other components that obviously failed and been replaced. I didn't actually get to pull the complete cost of Jake's truck throughout its entire life, which I probably should have. So those are factors that I didn't actually take into account. I just used the fuel as the basis because it's an alternative fuel. That's why I kind of moved toward that.
And there's more than just oil changes too. You have to change your spark plugs every, 100,000 kilometers. You have to change your differential fluids and your radiator fluids and your transmission fluids. If you followed your manuals, it would be probably pretty expensive.
Well, even just with fuel, it's pretty well a wash. So when you figure out there's 20% as many moving parts, in that 200,000 plus lifetime, I know on my pickup, I've already put wheel bearings in it, and it's at about 250,000. I put 2 sets of wheel bearings in it. Not to say there might not be wheel bearings in an EV, but the total cost difference seems to me to be so close as to not be worth worrying about. So I'm quite happy to go ahead with these vehicles and to show a little bit of leadership in the community too, because we've got to get off fossil fuels. Thank you.
I guess to follow up on that, what you've done, I just put a red on my truck and they $277. I mean, they add up once you get a bit of $8. You have something else?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I have some concerns about it. Let's be quite honest with you, we're looking at high-end vehicles here. We're not looking at small vehicles. I'm not sure if an analysis has been done to actually tell us what vehicle we need for the roads department. But what we do need is a work vehicle.
It's the building department, excuse me, it's the building department.
Building department, sorry. Yeah, building one. I'm gonna keep trying to give it to you, Dee. And, but I mean, let's be honest, it's a work vehicle, okay? Certainly, I have concerns with the fact that they are high end, the fact that their technology is in its infancy. Please, don't assume that nothing will go wrong with this new vehicle. I mean, may not have an internal engine combustion engine in it, but it does have a lot of electronics, okay, computers, and they're very expensive when they go bad to fix. Very expensive. I'm not against electric technology. I'm just concerned that this vehicle may be over expensive. I'm concerned with buying 2 of them at once. 2 vehicles that are new to production. If it turns out that they have a flaw in them or a problem, you're stuck with 2 of them. $110,000 is a lot of money. I mean, years ago, the older mechanics would tell you, never buy, I'm thinking of one particular mechanic said, never buy an Oldsmobile because that's when they test everything new. They don't put it in the Chevy or the Pontiacs. Wait till it comes out in that and it's a proven piece of technology. So my 3 concerns with them is 1, price. Hopefully it'll be better, but I'm not hearing a lot of confidence from the people who have done the real work on it. Secondly, I'm concerned with the whether or not it's the right vehicle first. And lastly, I'm concerned with buying 2 of them with really no proven experience on them. I mean, one we're looking at tonight is a Mustang. The other ones in this group is BMW, and they're high Tesla. They're high-end units. So is that what we really need for a work vehicle that carries, and I don't know what Jake has to carry. I'm sure at times there's a transom and a level, but I mean, he's also running around with muddy boots on building sites and that, so is this the vehicle we need? I'm just questioning that. I think it needs to be asked.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Kevin.
Just to bring up too, the cost of putting a charger in, I think that was what, about 5,000? To put the charger in over here, and that'd be good for both of them, you could plug the 2 in.
So, just to take an example of the vehicle in the parking lot that we test drove, it's $1,000 for that cord that you have to plug in and run a 220 wire, and we would have 2 of them, and so $2,000, and then roughly $2,000 in paying a local electrician to run a new cord from your panel over to the outside of the building and then install.
It's just 220? Is that all it is? 220 and that's what they plug into? Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay. Just, I guess, get some quotes and see the best price on them and then bring it back and have more debate on it. Maybe somebody will have more questions then.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Just curious what the warranty is.
It's 8 years, 160 on the battery life, that it'll maintain 80% for those 8 years, 160,000 kilometers. It's 5 years on all electrical components. Sorry, I am using the Mustang because it's the one that's actually you can drive right now. There are other ones out there. There's the Tesla Model Y, and 3 years bumper to bumper on the Mustang. So it's not that it's trying to slide it towards it, it's just the one that we could actually drive tonight. So those are the specs that I have.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Wenda.
So I understand that there is government funding as long as your price tag doesn't go over 55,000. Is there any way at all that there's a vehicle out there that would fall under that 55,000 that you would be happy to have in the electrical world?
Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, this is just kind of related, kind of to Doug's question too. So, I mean, if you just got a normal vehicle that didn't have all-wheel drive, that just had, front-wheel drive or rear wheel, some of them come with rear wheel. Yeah, so a car, like a Chevy Bolt, would come with a $5,000 incentive rebate from the federal government. I just put this in here because I'm doing on construction sites, not so much in the summer, but in the winter, it's nice to have. I use my four-wheel drive in the winter, almost every day. You would get stuff. It's one of those things where I put it in there. That's kind of what I think I need. If the cost is too much, I understand. Like I said, I think in that case, maybe the answer is, but yeah, that's what's really driving up the price of the all-wheel drive. And also the fact that it's an SUV, you've got that higher. I mean, you're on construction sites often, you bumpy roads, and it's nice to not have a car that's pretty close to the ground.
Anything else? Go ahead, Kevin.
Back to the batteries. What's the life on that? 160 kilometers, 160,000 kilometers, or 8 years? 8 years. Yeah. What's it cost to replace them?
That I'm not too sure. I'm not sure. Not too sure.
I knew it was very expensive before, but that was years ago now. So that may have changed too and gotten cheaper.
Absolutely, the costs have come down. The initial, like the Tesla was obviously the leader. In the early days, they were quite expensive. They come down to very reasonable. The Tesla Model Y, by comparison, is an SUV all-wheel drive, is 69,000. So they've all come down. And that's their newest model that's available.
Yeah, it was somebody that I knew had Prius, and I believe it was like $7,000 to replace the batteries or something. So it was basically a throwaway.
They were your very first.
Yeah, they were. That's what I say. And that was a lot of years ago now. So. Thank you.
Anything else? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, in terms of cost and pricing, I think with those warranties, it's not a concern. I mean, it may be a concern between 55,000 for an SUV and 43,000 for a Bolt or something like that, but then you've got usage concerns. This is not out of line at all when you look at operating costs. As far as being new technology, it really isn't that new. Maybe these particular models are new, but the EV technology now has been around for 20 years. I've got friends who've been driving Leafs, the plural, the Nissan Leaf, for many years now, problem-free. I'm pretty convinced that this is an investment in a technology that we're all going to have to adopt, and it's, I think, part of our mandate as leaders in the community to try something like this out. I don't see it as particularly high risk at all in terms of expense, and I understand your requirements for something that will not embarrass us on a job site, like getting some little car stuck 4 or 5 times a winter, you need to be mobile. So I'm fully in support of it, and I'll look forward to what we get in terms of estimates and pricing from whatever dealers are going to supply these things. And on that note, I tried to buy an EV in the area, I guess last spring. Nobody was interested in talking to me. I was surprised to talk to dealers in Kingston and in Belleville. I couldn't even get anybody in Scarborough to give me a call back. And I was just looking for a Leaf or a Bolt. And they don't know what to do with them, a lot of these dealers. They don't have trained mechanics on staff. They don't have salespeople that know how to describe the vehicle, that know anything about it. So maybe we can kickstart a little bit of local interest among dealers by ordering one of these things. Thank you.
Go ahead, Dick.
Yeah, me and Nate can kind of attest that I think that's changed in terms of the, I've seen a few of those on the parking lot on the road, and they're sitting in a parking lot in Kingston right now for sale. Not many, just one. And I think there's still limited production, but I think the changeover that you expected maybe last spring when you were looking around and shopping around is now finally come. Certainly not all dealerships, but in certain dealerships, I think that the high volume dealerships, you're starting to see that change over time.
Good. Volkswagen was fitted to be the leader as part of their Dieselgate scandal. They had to commit to clean energy. And so they actually have the largest network of chargers across all of North America now already in place. And they're expecting, their ID4 is the other all-wheel drive SUV that's expected to be the leader in the market. It's just coming to North America. The pricing will be available around April 7th. But they're leading the way, so to speak. But Ford definitely didn't fall behind, because the vehicle that we have outside, as those of you who got the chance to drive it, is actually, it's quite nice. They didn't just throw it together and throw it out there and get an EV in the market. They spent some time with it. And thus, so that dealer support, like Jake said, is definitely there. And the dealers, the salesmen that we've been speaking to, have been more than helpful and get us all the information that we can get access to. So it definitely has changed since last spring. It is the future.
Go ahead, Sherry.
I was just gonna say, what a great example we'd be setting too, going to all these new lots or people moving to the township that just, maybe starting something new.
Go ahead, Kevin, and we're gonna call.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'll make the motion that we have the fellows look into it and get us some pricing and some different things, and see where we go from there.
You'll move the recommendation. Okay. Seconder, Sherry? Any question, comment, or all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion carried. Stone Mill Recreation Center Engineering Design RFQ results. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, so this is, we got some new pricing back, after we made some alterations to the, design request for quote. And we put it out to a few other companies. I'm happy to say that we got prices roughly half of what we did a month ago. So happy to, bring this report back and get working on this, with council approval.
Any questions for council? Go ahead, John.
Well, this is great. So this Peter T. Mitches and Associates, they're out of Toronto, is that right, Jake?
Yeah, they come with references. They've worked only in the GTA, but I don't think that it's a small company, John. That's done a lot of work in Toronto, specifically for the city of Toronto, and basically the same work that we're doing to the Tamworth Arena or the Stone Mills Recreation Center.
So what do you figure is the timeline now? How long will it take them to come up with a design, and when do you think work can start and all that?
The request for quote, they have to have it finished by, I believe it's April 28th. I'm hoping that it would be before that, because obviously it's gonna take us some time to do the request for quotes and tenders to go along with it. And we're gonna need to get moving on this in early June, or it's not gonna happen.
Go ahead, Brad.
Just a courtesy update, CBO Detler, could you provide the update that we received with regards to possible extensions? If council so chooses, if we can't get it secured in time.
So for the entire scope of work, we actually have 2 grants. Everything that's taking place in the, well, I'll call it the utility or refrigeration room at the Stone Mills Rec Center is through an Ontario Chilling Grant Fund. It's a 2019 grant that was delayed from last year. They're hoping that we can get that work done this summer. The latest and more recent grant and the larger grant is for the slab replacement, and they responded back that it wouldn't be a big deal and they would have no problems with us delaying that until next year. So that was the question that John came back with the last meeting, that I promised him I would bring that to the next meeting, and unfortunately it didn't make it into the council staff report, but the 2 emails did come in Friday and today.
Okay, any questions? We have we're looking for a motion that council into a contract with Peter T. Mitch and Associates to provide design services and engineering oversight for the upcoming project at the Stone Mills Recreation Center. Moved by Sherry, second by Doug. All in favor of the motion? Motion carried.
Your Honor,
Oh, that's right, go ahead.
just wondering, just to go back to the vehicle, thing there. Are you okay going to get some pricing on like half tons or 3/4 tons or something like that to go along with that? With your EV prices, just like a comparable we can look at?
Thank you, Your Worship. Jeffrey is actually, Public Works Manager Thompson is actually doing another competition for trucks, just gasoline powered trucks, and we would bring them together, and then you could do a good comparison of what the price difference is going to be between my competition and his.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on here. Latest for consideration, request for letter of support for application for funding for the implementation of the development approval process of Livingston and County. Go ahead, Brad.
Your Worship, this request come to municipal staff last Wednesday by way of the County of Lennox and Addington. If you recall, the council supported the development approvals project as part of the Municipal Modernization Intake 1 funding. Council received that presentation and that project update in a special session with County Council and the consultant. They are now asking for a letter of recommendation, or a letter of support, for the implementation of that project. And so with the approval of council this evening, they're looking for us to draft that for inclusion with their submission for the actual implementation of the results of that funding. The manager of planning, Deputy Clerk Sands was an active part of that committee. And I'm sure if council members have any specific questions or process questions, he would be happy to answer those, as he was a very strong driver of that process given his RPP background.
Jason, we had a chat this afternoon. Do you want to fill the council in our conversation?
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. As CAO Brooks mentioned, yeah, the modernization process, I was one of the key members of that process, and see myself as a member of the steering committee should this phase 2 of what we consider the DAP or development approval process move forward continue. As you can see, and of those of you who were in attendance, I think almost all on that January 20th meeting with the key recommendations that came out of that recommendation from the consultants, how that spoke to a more unified approach from a development services perspective amongst all lower tiers, And the summaries of those conclusions are here listed as 11 sort of target items. For today's discussion, or for a very quick update for council, my first comment and biggest change would be number one, to implement a modernized development approval process technological platform. And right now, as many of you are aware, the county of Lennox-Addington hosts our GIS, our Geographic Information System, and updates much of our mapping systems for us here. One of the key considerations and recommendations of this process was that they expand that horizon from a GIS network perspective and also use that for the processing of development applications such as site plan control, consent applications, minor variance applications, etc. And as their focus and IT support in the county, they would be the holder and the administrator of that program on behalf of all of us at the lower tiers. By doing so, we would be granted licensee as well as annual licenses and agreements, so that we don't have to pay for essentially those out of pocket. We're using under the umbrella of the county, yet getting the technological support, etc. And what that means for people on the public is, should we have a platform such as this, it's a more transparent process. So members of the public who might find interest in a neighboring property owner's development file. What are they proposing to build through site plan control? What is the scheme of the overall plan of subdivision? All of that information, which we currently house in our civic web portal, would be more location based because it's a GIS contributor, as well as more easily accessible on a centralized mapping system. So I see that as being one of our large takeaways, as one of the first steps for this phase 2 of the development approval process recommendation. And as you note, and what I think is a tremendous success in that is that the county being a centralized holder of that technology. Obviously, most definitely, there are other components of this. For example, delegating some approval authorities to lower tiers. We've talked about that. Boyles Township and the town of Greater Napanee currently have subdivision condominium approval at the delegated level, and Addington Highlands and Stone Mills are still under the umbrella of the county from an approval authority. There's conversations that are underway, and as part of this, we're looking at moving into that process similar to our neighboring municipalities to the south, based on the fact of having a registered professional planner in-house currently. For example, continuing that delegation perspective, there is recommendations of delegating entrance permitting, should they even be on a county road, for example, where right now that's all done through the county, and we have this potential confusion for members of our public when they're going through an approval process as to whether they should be at the county or at the township. All that would be done here in-house in the township, as opposed to that two-phase or potential complication. So those are some of the key takeaways from what the consulting team has took away and recommended for the first phase, and what they're looking to do in moving forward. But I'm happy to expand or address any questions that you may choose. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Jason, or their hand up, Kevin? Yeah, go ahead.
Jason, did you see any drawbacks with any of that? Like the county taking over things that we may have now control over, or any such issues?
Through your worship, I to that point, Councilor Richmond, I don't see this as necessarily being a county taking over control. I see it essentially being a better alignment of responsibility. And I say that because in my mind, the county has excellent capacity with their GIS department and an IT support role to offer that assistance to some of our lower tiers, for example, us, based on lack of staffing. And I also think that to sort of even that responsibility perspective, I think our road group, for example, has maybe even better in-house knowledge of certain roads within our municipality, even though they might be classed as a county road, that they are better suited to provide comment on through a development approval process. So I really think, as opposed to somebody less leaving or obtaining lesser control in the future, I see it more as a balance that gives an appropriateness across the county and lower tier perspective.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, John.
So assuming we approve this, and I think we will, what will be the first order of business, Jason, once all the lower tiers are on board? Where do you start?
Through your worship, great question. My initial thought is that steering committee really gets firmed up and understanding who the key contributors are on it. We had a very localized one with our first phase of the development approval processing, and the second, I'm not 100% of the exact same or expanded. So I think that's going to be our first step. And the most timely consideration and understanding is that software component that we spoke to. Some of our neighboring municipalities, for example, Township, has invested resources and money into a cartograph program, and then as well into a different system that could be more collective for their building licensing and engineering systems or departments, sorry. So understanding what system the county brings in and whether all of the lower tiers can effectively play into that same system, where we may not necessarily have the challenge because we're not bound to a certain system to date. But that's going to be the most, I think, timely first step on trying to consider what that IT component is and how it effectively creates a streamlined approach for all 4 lower tiers as opposed to maybe just 2 of the 4. But that is really where I see the first steps heading. It is focused on what the anticipated outcomes we want from a development approvals perspective in the software game, as well as what's the appropriate system, software, and how do we see that.
Thank you.
Anything else? In front of us, we have a written recommendation to Council Director CAO to draft a letter of support for the implementation of the development approval process with Medicine County. Looking for Sherry. Seconder Doug. All in favor of the motion? Motion carried. Request from LCBO outlets within the municipality to confirm the municipality has no objection with LCBO outlets operating on Victoria Day, Canada Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving Day, or Family Day. Council wishes on this. Or comments? Go ahead, John. Start with you.
Fine.
Anybody else comment?
They're not open on those days now. I didn't know, they seem to be open every day. So.
I think your private ones are open those days, aren't they? This is just the LCBO.
Sorry, Your Worship, this is actually the retail outlets. This is not the LCBO. The LCBO is closed on those days, and so what they're actually looking is it's the LCBO asking their retail outlets to get confirmation from their municipal councils that they have no objections to the retail outlets being open on those days to permit them to have sales during those hours. So if you recall, this come to council a few years ago, we gave them indication, which was only one outlet at the time. This request is coming from the 2 newest ones, and we know it also applies to a previous one as well. So we're just asking for consideration, yes or no, throughout the township, so we can respond to those requests as they come in, as we believe all 3, both the Hilltop, McCormick's, and the Lucky Dollar, will all have to provide confirmation from the municipality that there's no objection.
Do you have something else?
Yeah, I mean, what happens if you don't allow it? If you don't allow it, you gotta line up on the night before everybody stocking up. If you do allow it, I don't think it's gonna amount to any difference in the volume or the amount. It's just the timing. I don't have a problem with that.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I'll just make the motion to go ahead.
You second that? All in favor? Carried. Okay. Items for information. Notice of funding allocation for costs associated with COVID-19 and the required reporting section. Anybody want to talk on this? Nothing, we'll move on to the next one. Minutes of the Quinny Conservation, January 21st, 2021 meeting. Anybody, anything want to report on that, John, or straightforward? Okay. New business and statement for members. If I have a motion to receive those reports, moved by Sherry, second by Kevin, all in favor? Carried. Now we'll do new business statements for members. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I have two. First of all, to Jason, has there been any, new movement that can be reported on the subdivision in Yarker? There is some noise around the area and people are wondering where it stands.
Through your worship, I've had a few phone conversations with members of the community, and the messaging from the municipality has been consistent. So I'd like to provide that as a bit of an update. Thank you for the opportunity, Councilor Davison. In that there's been some public notification that's been provided to members of the community by way of a sketch and an overall sort of development scheme proposal put forth by the newest owner of the former Warner Pasture subdivision. That concept sketch that I believe illustrates 21 or 22 parcels most definitely differs from what the concept sketch was back in 2010, 2011 timeframe, and differs from what was approved in 2010 through draft plan approval. So the sketch that has been provided and circulated, as well as the write-up by the newest owner, is been put out to provide members of the community with concept as to what the modifications might look like in the future. And to date, staff have not received anything further than that concept sketch. So there has been meetings and conversations with staff through pre-consultation with the newest purchaser as to what's required should they wish to modify the previous approval and the previous draft plan. So for example, transportation layout, road plan and profile drawings, transportation engineer on suitability of road networking, modifications to hydrogeology and density could necessitate additional pump testing and quantity testing, shoreline works along the river, excuse me. All of that would need to be considered in any revised submission. If the submission that was draft plan approved in 2011 is to carry forward and not be amended, then that's a far different conversation to final plan of approval than it is should there wish to be considerations. And everything that we have before us to date indicates that there would be changes to that original draft plan, which would then necessitate an amended approval process. And that amended approval process, as we know, is ultimately approved by the County of Lennox and Addington. They're the plan of subdivision / county condominium approval authority to date. Back in 2010 when it was approved, the approval authority was MMAH, so that is somewhat of a change. We at the lower tier municipality have a significant role in approving and providing a recommendation to county council as to any form of plan of subdivision or plan of condominium. So I've used some of the terminology with members of the public on my phone conversations to say the lower tier does a significant amount of the heavy lifting of the approval process, but the ultimate decision is made by the county. And when I say heavy lifting, I mean the public process, any public open houses, any opportunity for public input and consideration by council is all done here at our local level. And that would be necessitated, it would occur should the proponent or the applicant wish to pursue that amended plan. So just to reiterate, we have no further drawings or details before us above and beyond what has been passed out to the members of the community. And when a formal resubmission
if that is the way in which the proponent chooses to go, is submitted to the municipality, public opportunity for input, public signage and notification, and meetings with you as our lower tier municipal council will most definitely occur. So there's been some question marks around what that process looks like and how it would transpire. So I hope that provides some clarity to those of you with us this evening, as well as who may be watching online. I have spoke to several members of the public, including our counterparts at the County of Lennox-Addington, and we're all consistent with that response. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jason, for that update. Fear of the unknown is really drives a lot of concern in a lot of people, and I think you're probably well aware that the Freeman Trail has its known the walking trail, which is on the old road allowance, is a real concern, especially with the design that's been floated to the community and the well testing and that. So people are listening and interested, and I know Councillor Milligan and I had the opportunity to view a portion of it a few days ago. And we happened to meet a resident, and I think we got a real good understanding of how important that trail was in that conversation that we had. Secondly, I guess I want to talk a little bit about the library building in Camden East. Sorry. Secondly, about the library building in Camden East, I wonder when we're going to start our planning process. It's going to be ripped, tore down, but after it's torn down, we need to clean that lot up and everything, and I just assume that we not wait till August to do it tight like that, planning done early, so we can start whatever we're doing. Thank you.
You want to file an apology?
Yeah, I hadn't thought a lot about what it would look like in terms of probably community consultation stuff, in terms of what the grand vision for that corner and that lot is going forward. Does council have suggestions of how to start community consultation with campaigns about what that looks like, committee, etc.?
When you had her hand up first, were you talking about the same subject?
Yeah.
Or something? Go ahead.
I guess I would start with a public meeting, and to get some soft opinion, and then if it blooms into a committee from there, that you would have some interested people. The second thing though that I wanted to say was I heard out in the community from a person that they believe that the bricks are going to be available for sale, that you could buy a brick if you had a special sort of interest in that building, and I haven't heard that around this table. So I didn't know if that was something that has been circulated at all or up for consideration. That would certainly help with the renovations and plans moving forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I'm aware that there's a community citizen that is getting some bricks. I think it was only 50 bricks, and was had a charitable cause going. Was selling those per brick. I can update you though that all the bricks in good shape are actually being skidded up and are available for sale to the general public, which are the property right now of the demolition contractor, who is of the opinion that there actually is some value in all those bricks that are coming out of there. Not just for that building, but a lot of value, a lot of buildings of that age. So that's just what I know.
We're gonna go to Kevin first, and then you share.
My thoughts are we need a commitment from the post office. I think, like, there's no sense in having a committee and sitting down, what are we gonna do if we don't even know whether we can go? Like, there's no sense building the post office, they're not gonna use it. So I think we gotta get a commitment from those people as to where they stand on this. And if they, we need to know that. If we're gonna, if they're gonna
be a park, is it gonna be a building, or what's it gonna be? And if it's a building, is it gonna be a post office? I think they're gonna have to commit somewhere along the line, it better be now, if we wanna move forward with this. So I think we need to put their nose to the grindstone here and make them cough it up one way or the other.
Go ahead, Jake.
Thank you, your worship. Yeah, this sounds like a report, due next council on this subject, so something I should, send emails out and try to get, some clear direction from Canada Post, and then start with that, and then come back to council the next meeting with that response.
Thanks, Jake.
Go ahead, Sherry.
I just know that there's, the church there in Camden needs some brick repair apparently, and I wondered if the bricks could be used for that or donated to them for that.
Yeah, so I can respond to that, your worship. There is a lot of work to be done. They have some plans in place to redo the tower, engineered plans that are on my desk. There's a lot of expense in the work that they have planned. There's a lot of grants out there for municipalities to repair old buildings. It gets a little complicated when it's a church that's still active. And I mean, I'm sure there are historical revenues that can come in bigger municipalities like Toronto and Kingston where there's money available through a historical committee that we don't have here. You could drop off a lot of bricks up there. I'm not sure they would be color matching, Councillor Milligan. But the greater question is, what do you do once you drop the bricks up there, when you have, potentially $100,000 worth of masonry work to do there, and not a lot of money to put forward to the project. So, yeah.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, my question relates quite honestly to the corner lot. And let's be honest, at the very least, we're gonna clean the lot up. Okay, whether we put a building in there or not. And I think we'd have to also be very honest, we're not putting a large building back on a tiny lot and crowding the street. Hopefully, or I'm not, if the Canada Post is willing to have a building, I could see us putting a small post office in the back corner of that property and making a parkette out of the rest of it. I'd just like to see us move forward with whichever, whether it's just cleaning the lot up and making a parkette or putting a building in it so that it doesn't drag on. It's been dragging on now since last September. Let's get moving on it. There's times early in the spring here that, Jeff could probably put a loader in and a load of topsoil or so, and we could get something done in there, but we need to start planning for it. That's all I'm saying right now. Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, Christina or Brian, how much insurance money will we end up with once all the current demolition stuff is done? Do we know within, $15,000 or $20,000 what our budget actually will be?
So your worship, through you, I believe the original settlement that the municipality received for the building was 707, and there was an additional $100,000 for demolition, is that correct? Or is that it? Good.
I believe 707 was the total CAO roads.
So essentially, with the cost of the demolition, we're talking $40,000 net tax, so we're sitting around 660 at minimum for the replacement of that building.
So a small post office building isn't going to cost us $600K. Maybe we should be looking at community suggestions for other types of buildings. I'm starting to think affordable housing. If the post office isn't going to commit, what about a 2-unit duplex or something like that? Just let's be open-minded here about what we can do besides just having a vacant space with the park.
Okay, good enough. Any other statements, members? Go ahead, Jennifer, Brian.
I'm the only non-J. I get it, I do it every day. Your worship, I'm wondering if, in the absence of a public meeting, which is very difficult to do with the COVID precautions, and it's looking like we could actually be going, is this something that would be worthwhile, putting out a 30-day comment period to ask for suggestions so that we can compile those suggestions to have a report created? My concern is, and I know the best case scenario is to have a public meeting where people can pick up each other's ideas, but maybe 30 days from now, we can operate a Zoom meeting or something of that nature that could facilitate some discussion in addition to the public submissions, but maybe we could have those submissions created into a list made available in advance of that public meeting, and maybe get some better ideas or some furthered ideas from that rather than trying to wait for a public meeting, because I'm afraid that COVID may impose that as well.
Can we do something?
Would you suggest, Brian, waiting to do that after we find out from the post office?
Through your worship, I don't see any difficulty with, as part of the call for submission, identifying its existing use, as well as the municipal's desire to accommodate a post office if it should be. In the event that it's not, or other alternatives come available, what would the community like to see? Just to provide some input to allow both council and management to get an idea of what the community wants, as they're the one that will have to support this building in whatever capacity. But it would allow us to get some predetermined information so we can start to go down a certain path rather than taking a shot in the dark as to what we think they may want. It may be a good opportunity for the community who has a very pressured corner, if you will. Maybe they see an opportunity to relieve some of that pressure through an alternate means.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Sorry, just one more thing. At one time somewhere, and I think it was one of the meetings over in the garage, we talked about the possibility of the lot across the road, which I found out was county land. But could we find out when you come back with the report whether that's possible, that the county would switch off some land or something, so that if we build something that's on the bigger space and then the smaller space could be a park or something? Could we just find out if that's even a possibility?
Councilor Millian, we've did that. The county has indicated that in the future, if County Road 1 turns to an alternate route, they may wish to implement a corner, like a right-hand turn lane to go back into County Road 4. But there's nothing on the books at that time. That was the only obstacle that they saw. I think if we had a conceptual plan that would benefit the community and went to the county with a plan, they would entertain that based on the community contribution that it would have. So it would really come back to what's going on that corner and how would it benefit, the flow, or how would it impact the traffic flow, because that's what will determine what they need that lot across the road for.
Okay, any other statements, members? Do you have something on that, or move on here?
Just quickly, talking about the 30-day discussion period and submissions and then a Zoom meeting. How do we get that out to the public? So do we put it on our website? Do we put it in the newspaper? Do we post it at McCormick's over the coffee counter, which I think is or the liquor store? Just some ideas that we probably should be entertaining.
There's a village Facebook page too, right?
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Your worship, we usually entertain the three sources, Council, on that. We usually do our township website, social media. We do a public notice, and then we try to make sure that it's active inside the community. So, although a newspaper is a great idea, we're finding that the social media and the electronic platforms are actually further far-reaching and are getting there in a more expedient time than the traditional newspaper method. So, we would look to utilize this through our social media platform, which through past precedent has found its way onto the community social media platforms and websites, and keep that posting with our website and within that community.
Okay, move along. Any more statements from members? If not, motion for me bylaw by Sherry, second by Kevin. All in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn. Motion done. Good night, everybody.